Okay, so good morning, everyone. Recording this on Monday, December 11th, the fourth day of Hanukkah, as you can tell from my background, and still praying for peace in Israel, and may the lights of the Hanukkah candles provide blessing and peace. We met last 2 weeks ago because last week I was attending the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism and Rabbinical Assembly, the Organization of Conservative Movement Rabbis, convention that was in Baltimore, and so I couldn't do the class from there because I was in a session at the time. So. We ended last session talking about Jules's question about whether we are American Jews or Jewish Americans. And just a few days after Jules posed that question, we talked about it for a little bit. Senator Chuck Schumer published what he spoke about in the Senate about being an American Jew, Jewish American. And I wanted to look at his piece that was published in the New York Times. I want to look at that today because you'll see he goes back and forth from calling himself a Jewish American to an American Jew. So I want to look at that and keep in mind also with that article what the testimony of the three college presidents last week to Congress and the very, very disturbing testimony that they gave and answers that they gave to particular questions, very pointed questions about anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment on campuses today. That could be a topic for another time. But I want to look at Chuck Schumer's article today. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So the only problem is that New York Times comes with ads on it, but not too many. So Chuck Schumer, this is from November 29th, so a week after Thanksgiving, and again, a couple of days after we last met. What American Jews fear most? Okay, and I will make this bigger. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go through this and stop at various points to make a comment or two, and feel free, of course, to interrupt with questions or comments about it. So 53 days ago, Senator Schumer writes, citizens of Israel suffered a horrendous attack orchestrated and executed by Hamas. The solidarity that Jewish Americans initially received from our fellow citizens in the aftermath of October 7th has since waned, drowned out by other more disturbing voices, even from some we considered allies, while hate crimes against Jews have skyrocketed. Okay, so first of all, I think it's very important that we remember that Senator Chuck Schumer is Jewish, and he's not writing this just as the Senate Majority Leader, but as a Jew. And so here, first of all, he's calling himself a Jewish American. Okay, so that means an American who is Jewish. Okay, so American first, Jewish is the description of what kind of American he is. And he's talking about other Jews who are citizens of America. So Jewish Americans, the solidarity the Jewish Americans initially received from our fellow citizens in the aftermath of October 7th has since waned, drowned out by other more disturbing voices, even from some we considered allies, while hate crimes against Jews have skyrocketed. So this is a subtle hint at progressives, right? Senator Schumer being a Democrat, The Democratic Party, I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not an expert on the Democratic Party, but from the little bit that I read about it, the Democratic Party in America, and especially as represented in Congress, is under pressure, moderates versus liberals in the Democratic Party. Okay, so I don't know what Chuck Schumer is he moderate or liberal? But I do know that he has to navigate and keep everyone in line in the Senate so that they're as unified as possible when it comes to political perspectives. Okay, and so what Jews have felt in America since October 7th is a big wake-up call, especially progressive Jews in America, hearing that. So progressives, Jews who are progressives, assume that all progressives believe in the same thing and hold particular values dear. That is, you advocate for the disadvantaged. You advocate for the poor. You are rallying for those who are the underdog in order for them to achieve what everyone is so rightly deserves. That is all life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as the Declaration of Independence stated, or things like that, right? And then a big wake up after October 7th when these very same liberals and progressives turn out to be voicing anti-Semitic tropes, right? The Black Lives Matter group posted on their website the image of the motorcycle with a parachute over it, claiming that they side with Hamas. And from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and things like that, right? So progressive Jews have recognized that maybe they shouldn't be in bed with other non-Jewish progressives, and that it's very disturbing and it's very isolating to understand that we don't have, so I'll put myself in this camp, though I wouldn't consider myself a progressive Jew. I'm a more moderate centrist when it comes to political issues. But anyway, it's isolating to understand that when we as Jews in America think that we have partners in social justice advocacy, that we no longer feel as if we have partners with them. Okay, so that's I think what he's referring to in a very subtle way here, by more disturbing voices, even from some we considered allies. Okay, today, too many Americans are exploiting arguments against Israel and leaping toward a virulent anti-Semitism. The normalization and intensifying of this rise in hate is the danger many Jewish people fear most. Okay, so, this is a very fear that I think all of us have, and I'm able to put this fear down and not think about it too much because I focus on what I read. All right. So in other words, I intentionally read articles from people I know I'm going to like, and I ignore the articles from the people I know I'm not going to like, because I know that'll just make me more upset to read it. So, for example, after the testimony of the three college presidents last week, Bret Stephens wrote in the New York Times a piece about that, and I liked that piece very much. He talked about the double standards of freedom of speech on the college campus. And Michelle Goldberg, who typically is very liberal in her approach, also wrote a piece about it. Normally, I would ignore Michelle Goldberg. Just seeing the name tells me that when I'm scrolling through the New York Times website and looking at the opinion pieces, I'm not going to read that. Why get riled up? Right? So that's my attitude. That's why I'm not on Twitter or X. I'm not on Instagram. I don't read comments that people post on Facebook or anything like that. I don't need to be riled up, and I don't want to be riled up. So that's what I do, and that's how I deal with everything that's going on. So I read Bret Stephens, felt good about that, and that it makes me feel good that a columnist on the New York Times says what I believe. Well, I decided to read Michelle Goldberg, and to me, I was surprised that the very same thing that happened at the testimony could be written about in two very different ways. Okay, and so that just highlights to me that no matter what, in terms of what we think the facts are, that there are always going to be multiple perspectives about those facts. And so this normalization and intensifying of this rise in hate is the danger many people, many Jewish people fear most. Yes, this is what we see. I mean, the Washington Post aggravates me to no end about how they write and what they consider, what they decide to write about in terms of the war. It aggravates me to no end just how Hamas terrorists are referred to as combatants or militants, etc., etc. Okay, so it just, and the fact that there's social media today that is unfiltered makes all of this even worse. It would be one thing if it's the print media and it's television news. It's another thing when it's social media and social media is unfiltered and hatred is spewed all over the place. So since October 7th, that hatred has increased exponentially. Okay, since October 7th, so now Chuck Schumer is going on. Since October 7th, Jewish-owned businesses that have nothing to do with Israel have been boycotted and vandalized. That's right. There's a falafel. Where was that? In Philadelphia, a kosher Israeli place, or maybe in D.C. or New York. I don't remember where it is.
There was a place in Rockville.
Yeah, that's right. Oh Mama Grill in Rockville. Yes, but I'm thinking more about there is actually people protesting.
In Philly.
Yeah, I thought it was in Philly. That's right. One of these Israeli places in Philly was had protesters in front of it and flyers put on their windows, etc. Okay, so so Jewish-owned businesses, right? It could even be former Israelis who own it. It's just what is a falafel? What does a restaurant have to do with directly with Israel? Jewish students on college campuses have been harassed and assaulted with alarming frequency. Right, just at the Friday night dinner this past Friday night in shul, a college student was there with the rest of her family at the dinner. So I wanted to ask her. She goes to University of Maryland, what it's been like. And so University of Maryland, which has one of the largest Jewish student populations of any campus in America, is a relatively safe place to be Jewish. In other words, what I mean by safe is that you have some place to go, that you'll know there'll be other Jews there, and there'll be people advocating for you to protect you from any fear you might have of pro-Palestinian rallies that could be happening on campus, or faculty members who might be spewing anti-Israel sentiment in class. Right, so as far as campuses go, University of Maryland is a good campus to be on right now. And she was sharing with me how in one class she could hear the rallies happening outside the classroom, these pro-Palestinian rallies. And there's been graffiti on walkways around the University of Maryland campus about Hamas, Palestine 2.0 or something like that, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So there's stuff is happening on campus. That's the University of Maryland, but there's been worse stuff that we've seen the past few weeks that's been happening on campuses across the country. So Schumer goes on, a Jewish high school teacher in Queens told me about being forced to hide in a locked office from student protesters who were demanding that she be fired because she attended a rally supporting Israel. These are just a few examples. But they point, there was something in the news also, the Washington Post, I think the other day, about a Montgomery County public school teacher who, in her official Montgomery County public school email, she added a pro-Palestinian kind of element to her signature so that parents and students who receive email from the teacher will see in the signature that this pro-Palestinian sentiment. It's really awful that these things are allowed to happen. These are just a few examples, but they point to a troubling trend. Too often in Jewish history, legitimate criticism of Israeli policies or even older disputes over religious, economic, and political issues have crossed over into something darker, into attacking Jewish people simply for being Jewish, right? So yes, we might criticize the progressives normally before October 7th. We might criticize Jews who ally themselves with the progressive side of the political spectrum and non-Jews who are progressive for their anti-Israel sentiment. And a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment we could argue about because it bordered on anti-Semitism, like Israel policies are apartheid, things like that. But we could have condoned it or ignored it because it was wrapped in criticism of Israeli government policy. But now it only took a little bit to take that anti-Israel government policy and make it go over the line into anti-Semitic rhetoric. What happened last week, Schumer goes on, at the Queens High School is an example of crossing that threshold. Walking out of school to march in support of Palestinians is completely legitimate. But forcing a Jewish teacher to hide because she had attended a rally in support of Israel is anti-Semitism, pure and simple. For many, and this is the double standard that Bret Stephens, if you read his article last week, was talking about. Why is pro-Palestinian rhetoric okay, but anti-Semitic rhetoric? Why is criticizing pro-Palestinian rhetoric okay, but why is criticizing pro-Palestinian rhetoric not okay, but voicing anti-Israel rhetoric is okay? So that's the question that Bret Stephens asked, right? If you're going to be free speech, be free speech. Don't determine which free speech is okay. And then there's the other argument. What about, is there a line in which free speech becomes dangerous, right? We're not allowed to yell fire in a movie theater. You could argue that's free speech. Hey, I'm just yelling fire because I feel like it, but it's putting lives in danger. So free speech is not free speech all the time. There's a limit. So shouldn't yelling genocide or yelling slogans in which you're supporting genocide be forbidden? There's a limit. There should be a limit. Okay. For many Jewish people today, the rise of anti-Semitism is more than a crisis. It's a 5-alarm fire. That's why I feel compelled to speak out, especially consider the growing disparity between how Jewish people understand the rise of anti-Semitism and how many of my non-Jewish friends regard it. Okay, so this I give Senator Schumer a lot of credit for having the courage to speak up, not just as a powerful politician in America, but also as a Jew. While American Jews have always been wary of hate mongers lurking on the edges of our society, we are proud to be American because in this country, unlike so many others, our ancestors are able to put down roots and flourish. Take my own family story. Only in America could an exterminator's son grow up to be the first Jewish party leader in the Senate. But many of my family members elsewhere met more tragic ends. When I was a boy, I learned what happened when the Nazis invaded my family's town in Ukraine. The Nazis ordered my great-grandmother to gather her extended family on the porch of her home. When the Nazis told her to come with them, she refused, and they gunned her down, along with 30 members of her family from 85 years old to 3 months old. When I heard the story of what Hamas and its allies did in Kibbutz Be'eri, where they killed more than 120 Jews, from the elderly to the babies, it struck me on a deeply personal level. Okay, so again, I give Senator Schumer credit for sharing this very deeply personal story. I mean, Secretary of State Antony Blinken shared a similar story when he met with Prime Minister Netanyahu during the few days right after October 7th. So yeah, it's really incredible that these powerful people in American government, the Secretary of State, the majority leader of the Senate are proud Jews, and they understand that their Jewish story shapes in some way who they are and how they became the powerful politicians and government officials that they are. Okay, as opposed to other Jews who may have tried to keep that down. And whatever we could say about Henry Kissinger, some Jews criticized Kissinger for ignoring the fact that he was Jewish. So again, everything that happened in the Yom Kippur War with Henry Kissinger, President Nixon, and Golda Meir, I was only 11 years old at the time, but a few years after, as I learned about that, there were elements of Henry Kissinger's Jewish identity that Golda Meir tried to tap into that Kissinger refused to allow to happen. As opposed to Schumer being open here in this article and in this speech to the Senate about his Jewish past, and Secretary of State Blinken being open about that as well. Okay, so most Jewish Americans have similar stories that we learned at a young age and will stay imprinted on our hearts for as long as we live. We see and hear things differently from others because we understand the horrors that can follow the targeting of Jewish people. We've learned the hard way to fear how such attacks can easily erupt into widespread anti-Semitism if they are not repudiated. I am sure Arab Americans have similar fears when they see the rise in Islamophobia and horrific crimes like the gut-wrenching murder of the 6-year-old Wadea Al-Fayoume, a 6-year-old in the suburb of Chicago that happened a couple months ago. Okay, so now there's one thing that always that I kind of am taken aback at. You know, why did Senator Schumer have to bring up Islamophobia in this too? Because, in other words, what I'm thinking about, it's very powerful just for him to speak as a Jew and to speak about what this moment means for him as the majority leader, but also as a Jew, and recognizing what Jews in America are feeling right now. Is it important to broaden this to understand that other minorities, other religious minorities in America are feeling the same thing? Okay, but I maybe, but I kind of feel in some regard that this is something that progressives kind of feel the need to do, that to say, hey, I don't want to just focus on me as a Jew. We should be aware that this is happening to Muslim Americans too. I don't know. It feels kind of defensive to me. It feels like trying to, and I think this could be just the Jewish condition, that you just don't want to have too much attention focused on yourself. It could be, because it could be a little bit too dangerous for our survival existentially if we just focus on what's happening to us. If we put it in a greater context of what's happening to other minorities too, well, then it's a bigger boat that we're floundering in, and it's not just us. I don't know if I'm expressing this well enough. It's just that it just felt funny to me that he had to put this in here, right? He's talking as a Jew. He's not a Muslim. We're Jews. We're not Muslims. But yeah, okay. It's important to put it in context, but I don't know if it's necessary here in when we're talking about anti-Semitism. Anybody else have a comment about that and a reaction to that before I go on with this? Yeah, Perry.
It doesn't bother me at all because to me I liken it to when Senator Sanders said all lives matter, and he got criticized.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is a way of saying that any of this targeting because of religion, etc., is just horrendous. So I got no problem with it.
Yeah, I hear you, but I think we'll see as we read the whole thing, he's mainly focusing on Jews. So you have a couple of sentences here about Islamophobia. Why is he doing that? And so that's, yeah, Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, I think as Jews, the nature of the oppression is we're always struggling with the sense of not being legitimate.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the part what Lori just said. That's part of what I'm thinking here. And it gets to what he says at the beginning of this paragraph. We see and hear things differently from others because we understand the horrors that can follow the targeting of Jewish people, right? It's like you were always looking over our shoulder, worried about when the next attack is going to come from. And so, as I've said before, in this context of Jews in the news, up until 2016, when that man was elected president, I hadn't felt at all any threat to being Jewish in America. All my life, I went to Jewish day school all my life, 1 year in public school in 7th grade. So I lived in a Jewish bubble, granted, but still, I was never felt to be a target of anti-Semitism, and I never felt any experience with anti-Semitism, and I took for granted the fact that Jews have the luxury of being free in America. But it's only since then that I've started to look over my shoulder and to feel this uprising, or this not an uprising. I didn't mean it that way. An upsurge in anti-Semitism. The more that there is anti-Semitism, the more then I connect as a student of history to other periods in history in which Jews were attacked. You can't help think about the Jews of Europe in the 1930s. You can't help think about the Jews in Russia at the time of the pogroms at the turn of the previous century, and you go back in history to every generation before that where Jews have been targeted. So you can't help think about it here in America, despite the fact of how free we have felt. Okay, so perhaps bringing up, yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I was going to make a second point, which may sound really different, but I would say at the same time, it could be a way of expressing a commonality that could maybe in his mind could help build an alliance.
Okay. So that, and there's another point to that too, that Jews have always looked for allies to varying degrees of success. Right. So at the height of the civil rights movement in the early 60s, Jews were very close with black civil rights leaders and vice versa. And blacks were very happy to have Jews as allies in this. And we felt that we, Jews and blacks, felt a commonality there. And the fact that Reverend Martin Luther King's speech at the Lincoln Memorial in the March on Washington in 1963, his speech was preceded by a speech by a rabbi. So the speaker who was on the podium right before King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech was by a rabbi. So we were partners in that. So, but then shortly after that, blacks and Jews were not as closely aligned. So perhaps that Schumer might be reflecting here a hope that Jews and Muslims could be aligned in this country, and that has not happened. And in fact, we see, I mean, just the local Montgomery County or state of Maryland Muslim community leader, what is that organization? CAI something, I forget what that the organization, the person, but he expressed anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian sentiment, and many of the official Arab American organizations take a very anti-Israel line. So it's hard to find, for Jews to find commonality with Muslim organizations or Arab organizations in America. So, yeah. Okay. So Schumer goes on. Of course, criticizing the Israeli government is not inherently anti-Semitic. Over the years, I have vehemently disagreed with many of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's policies, especially his administration's encouragement of settlements in the West Bank, gravely harming prospects for a two-state solution, which I support. I have also been among those who have said that Israel must act according to international law and that humanitarian assistance for Palestinians is critical. But when criticism against Israel is allowed to cross over into something different, into a denial of a Jewish state in any form, into open calls for the very destruction of Israel, while at the same time the self-determination of other peoples is exalted, that is an example of the discriminatory double standard Jewish people have always found so hurtful. And we worry about what could come next. Right? So, yes, so Schumer is expressing the Jewish condition that we're always worrying about when the next shoe is going to drop, when the other shoe is going to drop. So that's just the nature of the Jewish condition. And that, yes, we could feel for decades that we're in a good place and that Israel is in a good place vis-a-vis relations with the world. Before October 7th, there was still a glimmer of hope that Israel and Saudi Arabia would normalize relations, right? And that therefore Arab countries have seen that Israel's not going away, and it's better to form an alliance with Israel, to have a stronger alliance against Iran, than to deny Israel's existence and not have an alliance with them. So, but that is changing. And then also with these, those who criticize Israel, you could, again, like I said earlier, you can live with that, but now it has taken that extra step, it has crossed the line. Because for centuries, and we worry about what could come next, because for centuries, what is good for everybody else has been too often denied to the Jew. Jews could live here, but not there. Jews could hold this job, but not that. and to declare that only the Jewish people cannot have their own state in any form is a glaring example of that double standard Jewish Americans so fiercely object to. I implore every person and every community and every institution to stand with Jewish Americans and to denounce anti-Semitism in all of its forms. Americans are stewards of the flames of liberty, tolerance, and equality that warm our melting pot and make it possible for Jewish Americans to prosper alongside Palestinian Americans, as well as every other immigrant group. America has always been exceptional, but when it matters most, are we still a nation that can defy the course of human history, where the Jewish people have been ostracized, expelled, and massacred over and over again? I believe the answer can and must be a resounding yes, right? So America has always been exceptional, is a nation that can defy the course of human history, and where Jews in America would not be ostracized, expelled, and massacred. Okay, whereas in every other country around the world, Jews had been. Okay, and America, since 1652, it's either 1652 or 1654, when the first boatload of Jews arrived in what was then New Amsterdam, fleeing the Inquisition that had reached Brazil. Since then, Jews have found a home in America, right? And we haven't been kicked out yet. So, Schumer, I believe the answer can and must be a resounding yes. And I will do everything in my power as Senate Majority Leader, as a Jewish American, as a citizen of a free society, as a human being, to make it so. So, I think that it's quite a, like I said, it's quite a powerful statement from this Jew, our fellow Jew, Senator Chuck Schumer, who my wife remembers when she graduated 6th grade in Brooklyn from PS 197, I think she went to. He spoke when he was a council member in Brooklyn at her 6th grade graduation. So that's her connection with Senator Chuck Schumer. And so yes, he's a good friend. We should be proud of him, and proud of the courage that he took in writing this and speaking this on the Senate floor, and that understanding that that even as a powerful political leader that he is, he's at the core a Jew, and that has determined who he is as a person, and he has voiced the feelings that we're all dealing with at this time. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Saul. Go ahead.
It's about the university presidents.
Yeah.
It seems like nothing really happened until Jews started withdrawing money, which kind of doubled down on what these people think about us. Okay.
Yeah.
And that really bothered me. We couldn't use any influence except we'll withdraw our money. And I think that doubled down what people were thinking.
So yeah, that there's a danger to that. Absolutely, there's a danger to that. I think, though, that college presidents have lost their jobs because of donors withdrawing money before, and not just this time over this particular issue. So I think that the overriding issue is that money talks. Okay, now, yes, it turns out that Jewish money talks in this particular case, but still, for other cases, I think that money talks on the college campus, and money talks not in the nonprofit world. Whoever has the most money has the most influence, And if they threaten to withdraw the money because of some particular policy of that agency, then sometimes the president of that agency has no choice but to resign. So yes, I hear what you're saying, Saul, that there's a danger that that just adds to these anti-Semitic tropes that are out there. Jews have the money, Jews control, have the therefore have power. Um, I haven't gone that far like you have. I just have been thinking that money is power, and that it's a good thing that these presidents feel threatened by taking the position that they took.
Yeah, but they also get money from the really rich Arab nations.
No,
They
that's true
also,
too. Yes, that's for
they
sure.
take
Lots of
positions based on that too.
now that's what I've read as well over the past few weeks. That like Qatar and United Arab Emirates and a lot of Arab countries like that have invested very strongly and greatly in campuses. Like it's no secret I can say that Ellie Alpert's granddaughter was a student at NYU's campus on the in it's either in Bahrain or Dubai, or I think it's in Dubai. So, why do they have a campus there? Because that country, that Arab country, gave a lot of money to NYU, and therefore they can influence possibly faculty and curriculum on the campus as well. So yeah, there's that danger that particular anti-Israel sentiment can wind its way into the very foundation of the college campus too. So it makes it even more dangerous or threatening to be a Jew on campus today. Any other thoughts or comments about Senator? Yeah, Bob, and then Perry.
Rabbi, I don't know if you heard this, but the other day, I think it's in Brookville, there was a Muslim mosque that received a bomb threat. Did anybody else hear about that?
I didn't know there was a mosque in Brookville.
Well, we've got several in Montgomery County, but
There are, but the work
maybe
that
I've got, maybe it's in Burtonsville.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a mosque in Burtonsville. Yes.
But I know you related a few weeks ago that none of your colleagues in your interfaith group, or very few, had reached out to you.
Correct.
Did you ever reach out to the imam at that place? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Right. So I was not aware that that mosque had received a bomb threat. If if I were aware of that, then I would have reached out. I do have a relationship. If it's the mosque I'm thinking of on Good Hope Road, the leaders of that mosque, the lay leaders, do come to our interfaith
Okay.
meetings. So I'll have to look into that. So thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, go ahead.
The other thing is, you're right about money talking, because I'm a Democrat. I give money to Democratic causes. But when the invasion happened and the squad started doing all the anti-Israel stuff, I dashed off a letter to the DNC and said, don't you ever contact me again if any penny can go to the squad.
Yeah. Right. Well, we have to take stands like that, and we have to let the organizations know that there's going to be consequence to particular positions that they take. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's going to be a fallout in Democratic fundraising because of the squad.
Well, right. So that again, that would be a discussion for another kind of session, which I'm not capable of leading. That is, who's going to win how is President Biden's strong support for Israel at this time going to affect his reelection chances? So again, I'm not an expert on that, and don't want to spend time on that. But yes, it's something that we're definitely going to have to worry about for the next several months. Perry, what were you going to say?
This whole topic is one that makes me feel like I'm the spark jumping between two electrodes. In my opinion, the undue influence, if there is any, of having these college presidents speak is just ridiculous, because the overwhelming number of students in America are taking courses in accounting and pre-law and biology and nursing and home decoration. They don't really care. And the way that these senators and congressmen address the college student experience is that it's as if every person is taking 3 psychology or philosophy courses a semester. And so there's just so much undue influence. Now, do I like these protests? No. And do I think that's an issue? Yes. But giving them this, I don't know, just so much attention paid to these college presidents, I'm sure there's better things to discuss.
No, Perry, I understand what you're saying, but I think that the issue is after October 7th, there were many college presidents who were quiet about what was happening in terms of, okay, so a college president would need to take a stand if a segment of the college's student population is feeling threatened by another segment of the same college student population. So if there are anti-Israel rallies happening on campus so that Jews on campus are feeling threatened, then the leadership of the campus needs to take a position on that. Okay, so to make sure that all students feel safe. And the problem is how several college presidents, these 3 and others, failed to adequately show that they were agreeing with the safety of the Jewish students on campus. So,
I hear you.
Yeah, and the other thing is, maybe these 3 or other college presidents were very vocal on Black Lives Matters issues.
Okay.
Right? So if you're going to take a stand about one political issue, then you're going to be asked why you're not taking a stand about another political issue. Okay? So either don't take any stand and just be neutral and say we're in favor of free speech, or make a stand about everything. So that's the problem. If you're going to wade into these waters, you better be prepared to deal with the water and therefore the criticism that you're going to get. So that's the issue. And so if you have a subscription to New York Times, read Bret Stephens' article that he wrote last week, and he touches on all of this.
But the 3 presidents seem to they got together ahead of time and they had the same answer. And I'm sure that
they were coached. There was an article that they were coached. There's a law firm, Wilmer Hale, that specializes in coaching people who are going to be testifying to Congress. And so somehow they all answered the same way because of how they were coached. Yeah. So, okay. So thank you all for being here today. Wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. Like I said at the end of the morning service today, may the light of Hanukkah provide blessing and peace for all of us. Take care, everybody.